All right, let's dive right in. Today we're looking at a source that does something pretty radical. It puts our entire understanding of cosmic time on trial. It's laid out like a forensic audit, and the subject being investigated, well, it's history itself.
So, it all kicks off with one of the biggest, most fundamental questions you can ask, right? How old is the universe? Now, the answer you probably have in your head, billions of years, is about to get challenged in a really profound way.
And boom, right away, the source material just lays it out there. Two timelines in completely different universes. On one side, you've got 13.8 billion years, which it calls extrapolation. And on the other, just 5,786 years from what it calls the signal. I mean, the difference there is pretty much everything. So you gotta ask, how could anyone possibly justify a claim that huge?
How the argument starts by going after the very method we use to measure deep time. It uses this really powerful allegory. An inspector, see, but his ruler is broken, and he's trying to deconstruct the now to figure out the then.
This is the source's boiling pot allegory. Imagine an inspector finds a pot of water at 99 degrees. He measures it and sees it's cooling by 1 degree every hour. So he does the math, works backward, and concludes this pot has been cooling for millions of years. But here's the catch. He missed the most important event. The chef just turned the stove off 2 minutes ago. The whole point here is that if you just measure the present without knowing the true starting conditions, you can end up with what the source calls a mathematical hallucination.
So this is how the source defines extrapolation. It's not just some neutral math tool. It's framed as a mirage. It's a whole philosophy that assumes the process you're watching has always been steady, always been linear, with no sharp turns and, crucially, no distinct beginning. Or, to use the allegory, no chef.
Okay, so if the universe isn't just a slowly cooling pot of water, then what's the alternative? The source puts a completely different model on the table. It calls it a world born mature. Now, to make this massive concept a little easier to grasp, the source uses a great analogy. The universe was initialized like a video game. Think about it. When you start a game of Mario, you don't have to wait millions of years for the mountains to form, right? No way. The programmer just draws them fully formed, so the game is ready to play, instantly. And in this view, the world was born an adult. It was ready to run from the get-go.
This is just a brilliant illustration of the core argument, which the source calls the follows principle. Our inspector comes along, counts 700 rings on a tree and says, simple, the tree is 700 years old. Makes sense. But the source's architect offers this radical alternative. What if those rings aren't birthdays? What if they're structural bones? Just the necessary framework for a fully formed tree that was created whole. The universe in this view wasn't planted like a tiny seed, it was manifested as a full-grown forest.
So building on that foundation, the source then presents its forensic audit. It starts pointing to specific puzzles from mainstream science and labels them as exhibits against that standard 13.8 billion year story.
And the list is pretty compelling. It points to things like the Hubble tension, this major disagreement on how fast the universe is expanding. It talks about the maturity crisis, where the James Webb Telescope is finding these huge, fully formed galaxies way earlier than our models say they should exist. Then there's the baffling discovery of soft, flexible tissue inside dinosaur fossils, and even the rapid decay of Earth's magnetic field. The source calls these anomalies the screams of a system that's rejecting a timeline that was falsely forced onto it.
So, if scientific measurement is the broken ruler, what's the reliable one? Well, the source proposes something it calls the blockchain of the Masorah. It's a fascinating idea. It reframes the Jewish oral and written tradition not as a collection of myths, but as a kind of high-integrity, distributed ledger. A historical record that's anchored by a single event witnessed by millions and then secured against corruption by all those minds over thousands of years.
Now, this obviously brings up a huge question, one that the source absolutely has to answer. If the universe really is young, then why on earth does it look so old?
The answer, according to this text, isn't about deception. It's about concealment. It's rooted in a concept called tzimtzum, which kind of means constriction or hiding. The idea is that the architect conceals himself within the laws of nature. He pretends to be absent, to create the space for us, for humanity, to have genuine free will. Because let's face it, if the creator's presence was totally obvious, would we really have a choice in anything?
And this leads to what the source describes as two different perspectives on reality that exist at the same time. You have Dat Elyon, or higher knowledge. This is the true perspective, the architect's view, where the world is brand new and constantly being brought into existence. But then there's Dat Tachton,
Lower knowledge. That's our perspective, from inside the game, where the world looks old, independent, and like it runs on its own. So in this view, the appearance of age isn't a bug, it's a necessary feature.
Now, to bring this whole thing home, the source boils the entire conflict down into one final, really powerful metaphor: the ink versus the copyright. So first, you've got the inspector's approach. He takes a book, he analyzes the physical stuff, the carbon in the ink, the way the paper is yellowing, and he uses these physical processes to work backward and calculate a history of 3 million years.
But then, there's another way to find out how old the book is. Instead of measuring all its physical bits and pieces, you could just, open the cover and read the copyright page, the author's own declaration of when it was published.
And this is where the source leaves us. The entire debate, it argues, just comes down to this one choice. Are you measuring the ink, or are you reading the copyright? It frames this not really as a fight between science and faith, but between two completely different ways of knowing. A lot to think about. Thanks for tuning in.